You were there. You were awake. You were feeling things, learning things at a rate no adult brain could ever match. And yet, when you try to reach back into those first years of your life, there is nothing. A wall. A blank. Total silence where your earliest memories should be. You cannot remember being a baby. And that fact, if you sit with it long enough, is one of the strangest things about being human. Think about what was actually happening to you. You were learning to recognize faces. You were figuring out gravity. You were building the entire architecture of language from nothing but noise. Your brain was forming 1 million new neural connections every single second, and not one piece of it stayed with you. Why? The answer starts with a word most people have heard, but few have really sat with: infantile amnesia. Sigmund Freud named it in 1905, when he noticed that patients could not recover memories from early childhood no matter how hard they tried. For most of the 20th century, the assumption was simple: babies cannot remember because babies cannot think. The brain is too undeveloped. But then researchers actually tested infant memory, and everything changed. Carolyn Rovey Collier at Rutgers University tied a ribbon from an infant's ankle to a mobile. The babies quickly learned that kicking made it move. Days later, weeks later, they still remembered. They kicked when they saw the same mobile. Babies can form memories. So the question became, why do those memories disappear? The answer has almost nothing to do with the memories themselves. It has to do with the brain they were stored in. The hippocampus, the structure most responsible for converting experiences into long-term memories, is still under heavy construction in infancy. New neurons are being born at an extraordinary rate. And here is the counterintuitive part. That growth disrupts existing memory circuits. The new cells overwrite old connections as they integrate. The very process that makes infant brains so powerful at learning makes them terrible at holding on to specific memories. Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn in Toronto confirmed this. When they slowed neurogenesis in young mice, the mice remembered longer. When they sped it up in adult mice, the adults started forgetting like infants. The cells that build a new brain may be the same cells that erase it. But there is another layer underneath this: language. Think about how you remember anything from your adult life. You tell yourself a story. You put it into words. Memory and language are deeply entangled in the adult brain. Before a child has words for an experience, the experience cannot be stored in the same format that adult memory uses. It is like trying to save a file in a format the software does not yet support. Robin Fivish at Emory University showed that children who were taught early to talk about their experiences, to structure events as stories, tended to have earlier and richer first memories than those who were not. The story was not just a record of the memory. The story was what made the memory hold. So here is what you are left with. You were a being of full perception and feeling. You were forming attachments, discovering the world, building emotional maps. And then the brain that held all of that rebuilt itself so completely that the self who lives inside you now cannot reach back to find any of it. But those erased experiences shaped everything. The attachment patterns you carry into every relationship, the emotional reflexes that fire before you have time to think, the way you respond to being left alone or held or startled. Those patterns were laid down in years you cannot remember. The experiences did not survive as memories. They survived as you. You were there in those early years, living and becoming. You cannot remember any of it. But in a way that matters more than memory, none of it was ever really lost.